Hello and welcome to Saturday Night Crafting. Tonight's a little bit different than normal. Tonight I'm going to walk you through without doing a voiceover. I find that the card we're going to do tonight is a little bit more complicated. It's really easy, but there are some steps and I feel like if I do a voiceover I'm going to probably forget some of the bits that I need to remember to tell you. So I'm just going to talk you through it. Obviously we'll speed up where we can and I'll try and keep this video nice and short for you, but tonight's video is a really fun wow card. So tonight we're going to make a quadruple slider card. So we are going to have a slider card that doesn't just slide outward, it's going to also slide upward. So it gives us lots of opportunity to do some fun decorating, some fun creativity, and then have a little space for a message on the back as well. I'm going to share with you a few different ideas. So unfortunately I don't have a card that is already done as a basic standard slider card, but they're very common, they're all over the internet. I had a look because I thought, wonder if I could do this where we've got 4 rather than 2. So I had a quick Google search and came across a video where someone did this about 15 years ago, something like that. So I've linked her video down below for you. She's like over 1 million views on it. It's quite awesome. And then I've tweaked it slightly to adapt it to how I want it to be and what I want to use it for. I've got 2 sample cards here that are not decorated, but just to kind of give you an idea of where we're going with this tonight. If you had a normal slider card, it's generally like a normal sort of A6 size or a longer card. And the idea is that you then pull it, or you have one side where you say pull, so it goes in and you can pull one and the other one comes out. That's a standard slider card, sorry. So you have a little pull tab and you just pull and it opens up going side to side. Now in a quadruple one, you end up having an extra one on the top and bottom. So you get this gorgeous big massive panel where you've got 4 different ways that these slide out. Now I'm going to apologize, you're probably going to hear lots of racket and noise going on. We're still having our loft done. It's Saturday and we've got a lovely guy up in the loft drilling and sawing right above my head. So I apologize if you can hear any of that. I am trying to stop and edit out some of the noise, but it's a bit difficult. This one here I did as a nice card where we can open it up. I can have a little panel in here and you can have your message with your greeting on the inside. And it's just standard card, and I'll share with you a couple envelope ideas of what you can do. I'm not going to make an envelope or anything for it. There's lots of different options that you could do. You just make it bigger, and obviously you'll pay more postage because it is quite big and weighted by the time you're done, but it's really easy to do. I boshed these both out in about an hour and a half. Really quick and easy to do. This one I decided to make into like a hanging ornament, so I attached some string onto the back of it so that the recipient can just pull it out and they could hang it on the Christmas tree if they want. You can obviously take all my measurements, which I will put in the description box, and I will tell you along the way. You can take those measurements and you can just take them down 1 inch or 2, and then you can obviously make like a little mini one, and if you put a little bit of ribbon on the back, then you could hang it on a tree as well. So those are 2 ideas off the start. We are going to do this one today. We're going to do the one with a nice big card back on the back of it and a space for your message to be written on the inside. So you could obviously stand it up if you like, and you could just have those sides out. But this is a really fun technique and a really fun card where you could make up a whole bunch of Christmas cards quite quick and easy. You could bulk produce them by cutting out all the measurements in one go, and then you're ready to go. It also is an amazing way to use up our paper packs. So we can get through all that designer paper that we've been hoarding, and this is a great way to use them because you get 5 different places to have your beautiful papers. So for tonight, I have got this little set here, which I picked up from Every Craft's a bargain. And I believe it was £1 for each of these, so I paid £3 for all of this, which is cracking awesome. It's always worth keeping an eye on their website. They add new stock all the time. They do not ship internationally, so I apologize. This is, I think, UK only. But they have basically a retired stock and they sell it off for cheap. Now the reason I'm going to use this set here is because I've got these really awesome like embellishment sheets that are all pre-cut out, so we just have to push them out and pop them out, and then we can really quite quickly make quite a few of these as Christmas cards. I've also got the matching stamp set, so if I want to do any stamping on the inside or add any extra embellishments, I've got that and it's good to go. The other thing you're going to need is some plain colored cardstock that matches with your designer papers. So it's quite easy to do. If you've got nice, brilliant, bold prints, then you just pick one of the colors in those prints and grab some cardstock. Obviously we need some scissors, We're gonna need some foam strips. You could cut down your foam tape if you only have foam tape. We're gonna need a pencil, some super duper strong tape, a ruler, bone folder optional, and ribbon optional, and some liquid glue. So I'm gonna get started. I'm gonna cut all my pieces ready to go. And all the pieces again are in the description box below, so you can grab those and write them out or print them out, and then that way you've got them ready to go and you can crack on. Now the only difference in my measurements for the card is if you want to make one that's nice and tight and all together, then you are going to use the 4x4 card base or the 4x4 panel. If you want to have a nice big wider card base, so the one here that I have you can see is much bigger. This one's all nice and hidden. It's the same size as this front panel, which is 4x4. You're going to then do 4 3/4 by 4 3/4 as your back, or you could go 5 inches, you could go 6 inches, you could do this back bit as big as you like, depending on how much you want showing. So this bit here is your card base. And then obviously the top panel is going to be 1/8 of an inch smaller, or 1/4 of an inch, sorry, smaller than your card base. So 2 different versions. I'm doing the one with the nice big wide background today, but if you don't want to, you just keep it the same as your top panel. Exact same size, and you can choose whether you're going to have it as a card base that opens, or if you're going to have it as a panel on the back. Okay, so by card base I mean one that opens and you've glued your whole entire element on the top, or you could have just, you know, snip that along there and then you've just got the back, and you could staple on some ribbon if you want and attach on a bit of card to do your message that way. Okay, I went ahead and quickly cut everything out so it's all ready to go to be assembled and created into a quadruple slider card. So I have my base, which in this case I'm doing the bigger base, so it's 4 3/4 by 4 3/4. So obviously when folded it's nice square. I've got my topper, which is 3.5 by 3.5, and that will rest nicely on there. And then I have my top panel. This is 4 by 4 inches. I then have a layer at 3 3/4, so 1/4 of an inch smaller, and then 3.5 by 3.5, so again 1/4 of an inch smaller. So I got those layers there. You can go ahead and glue these straight away when these are all finished. Then I have 2 pieces of my mechanism, and this is 3.5 by 3.5 inches, and we will make these into the mechanism in a minute, where we're going to cut out a little piece there. We then have 2 pieces that are going to be our middles. These are 3 3/4 by 3 3/4. You need 2 of those. Sometimes it could be helpful as well if you want to write on the back what the measurements are, so you don't forget which pieces are which. You will have all that hidden, so it doesn't really matter. Then we have 4 sliders, obviously because we have 4 directions of where our card is going. So we've got 4 pieces of cardstock for the sliders, and they are 4 inches by 3 inches. And then I've done a layer to go on top of the sliders, so I've got a layer. I've had to pay attention to how I'm going to cut these. These are going to be the side layers, and then I've cut them so that those are going to be the going up layers, and the layers are just 1/4 of an inch smaller than our slider bases. So again, it's 3 3/4 by 2 3/4. Now, one of the other vital bits of kit that we need for today is some really thin plastic. So you could use an old shopping bag if you want, however just make sure it's nice and thin plastic, or a sandwich bag like this will do well. This is just the Asda small sandwich bag. So I'm going to start with gluing everything first. So I will glue my top layer together, I will glue my base layers together. I will also glue my decorative paper onto my slider pieces. Now, one of the things that you can do, you can either leave it as is, or you could round the edges. I've got my corner rounder here. This is just a big corner rounder. It cuts through many things. You don't need one giant like this. Any corner rounder will do, and you can go ahead and round your corners. So the nice thing about this big corner rounder is I can shove them all in one go and just chop them. And then this you will have to pay attention to, because obviously if it was a neutral pattern like this, it wouldn't matter. You could cut all of them in one go, but I know that these are going to go this direction, so I need this side rounded, and I need the other side, opposite side, rounded on these ones, or else you're going to end up with two the same and it won't work. And again, these are going to go this direction, so I want to make sure I round the tops and around the bottoms on those. Now if you haven't got a corner rounder that can sort of make your corners nice and round, but you want something decorative and fun, you can just go ahead and chop the corners off, just snip them and give yourself a little bit of a decorative edge as well. For this card here, I use this kind of deco edge. It's got a deco, and the other one's called stub. I don't know what that means, but you can do fun little decorative edges on them as well if you've got one of these funky corner rounders. So once all your pieces are glued and ready to go, we're going to move on to the mechanism. So we can tuck these to the side. We are going to grab the 2 smaller squares of the remaining 4. So we've got 4 here. We're going to grab the 2 smaller ones. These are our middle bits, our middle layers, and these are the mechanisms. So now is where we need to come in with our bag, our ruler, and our pencil. Now a T-ruler is nice and handy for this because you can bump that cardstock right up to the edge and you know you're getting a perfect line, so you don't need to then put your measurements on both top and bottom to draw a line. You can just draw your line because the T-ruler holds it nice and straight for us. So that's what I'm using today. If you don't have a T-ruler, just make sure you put your measurement at the top and the bottom so that you can line your line up nice and straight. So all we're going to do here is mark 1/2 inch on all sides. So I know that mine is 3.5 inches wide by 3.5 inches, so I'm going to mark 1/2 inch and then the 3-inch mark, and that gives us 1/2 inch from each side. I'll turn my cardstock and I'll do the same again, so 1/2 inch and 3 inches. Now I can take my ruler and I can just draw straight along that line and move it down. Because I've got that nice T-ruler, I can just literally line it up nice and straight and draw my line. So when you're done, you have something that looks like this. Now you can either do your first one and trace it onto your second one, or you can do the exact same thing again, do your measurements. I'm going to be lazy and I am just going to trace it onto the second one. So we're going to pick one side and we're going to do a snip here, turn it directly to the opposite side, snip, snip, or you can just snip and cut at the same time. It doesn't really matter. And then you're just going to follow that line. I haven't found it makes too much of a difference if this line is a tiny bit wonky. Your slider still slides. So I wouldn't worry and overly stress, but just follow that line as carefully as you can. And in the end, you will have a shape like this. So now I can take my slider element, place it right over top of the other one, and then I can just trace it, and then I can go ahead and snip that side out as well, and then they'll be perfectly identical and I didn't have to go ahead and measure. So now we've got 2 of these and we're going to go ahead and wrap our plastic bag around them. So I'm going to take a longer pair of scissors now. I'm just going to trim off this edge. I'm going to try and go as straight as I can. This bit is a bit more important. You do want to remain straight on this bit because we are going to use this as our slider mechanism and we don't want it too wonky. So I'm just trimming off that edge there so that I can then use this as a strip. I'm going to line it up over top, and what you want is you want this plastic to sit in between these 2 slits here. If it's a tiny bit smaller, that's okay. You don't want it a tiny bit bigger. If it's a tiny bit bigger, it won't slide very easily. It'll get a bit caught on the edge. So I'm going to make mine the itsy bitsiest smaller, and again I'm going to try and aim to cut straight. And this will cover both your slider bits if you've got a nice long bag like I've got here, or a nice medium-sized bag, I guess. So now we have a piece like this, really nice and long. It's really hard to see because it's clear. And we're going to attach it to our mechanisms. So I've got my bit of plastic underneath my mechanism. Impossible to see. If I fold it over like this, you can see it a little bit better. So you can see that line there, and it lines up just inside my little cut out notchy bit. And we're going to take some super strong tape. I'm going to use red line tape, and this bit here is really important. We don't want to have any of this super sticky tape sticking anywhere onto our card. So this tape I'm going to line up right on the edge of my plastic. It can go over or go in just slightly, don't go over. So I'm going to run that along here, and then I'm going to snip off the excess, and you want to make sure that you have not got any hanging over. If we have any at all hanging over, it will stick and it won't slide, and it won't be a slider card. Now I like to use my bone folder and just push that down nice and firm, or I find it kind of comes back off when I try and peel off the release paper. And then all I do is I make sure I've got that nice and snug on that corner there, on that side. And I'm just going to take my plastic and I'm going to drape it over ever so slightly loose. So I'm not pulling it taut on that end, I'm just pulling it over a little bit loose. And you can see my bag wasn't beautifully cut there, so I've got a bit of adhesive exposed. So I will trim that. I'm going to snip that off so we don't have any excess. And then I don't know if you can see that on camera, but I have got a bit of sticky just there, where I cut this side obviously a little bit thinner than the other side. So I'm just going to slightly trim that off so there's nothing sticky at all there anymore. Then what we're going to do is move that all the way to one edge. So we now have our sticky right along there, and we're going to have that one like that along that edge. Do the exact same thing with your second piece. So when you've got them both ready, you will have two pieces that's slippy slidey, nice and easy, nothing's getting stuck, nothing's getting caught on anything. So we've got our one piece here, we're going to stick our little panels on. So we need to bring in our panels like so. And what we're going to do is we've got our sticky right up against that edge there. We're going to stick some more red line tape right on top of that sticky line. And then we can add on our first slider. So again, I'm avoiding letting any of the sticky tape go onto my backing bit, my piece of cardstock. We are only working on top of the plastic. I've got my sticky adhesive there. I'm going to take my first panel and I'm going to line it up directly with this edge right here, the very edge where the sticky stuff is, and I'm going to aim to line it up right in the middle of the top and the bottom. So I can just lean over my project a bit, make sure I'm spot on in the middle and that I'm spot on lined up there, and give that a firm press. Now I've got the first panel on, and as you can see it's just stuck on that one edge. That is all it is stuck on, it's not stuck anywhere else. Our next one is going to go behind. So we want to hold our piece like that because that's how it's going to go. We want to make sure we're going the right direction with the writing, and we want to make sure we're not upside down. We're going to flip it over. Exact same thing but in reverse. So now our sticky tape is going on the right hand side instead of the left. So again, we're right up on that edge. We are not touching the cardstock. We're going to take our release paper off. This time we're keeping it flipped over exactly the way we lined it up before we turned it over. We are again going to line it right up with that edge along there, our cutout edge, and we're going to line it right up in the middle, lining up with this panel here. When you have it lined up, give it a nice firm press, and now we've got our slider. So the slider should move nice and easy, and it's quite satisfying. So we do the exact same thing with this one. However, this time we are going to end up with it going up and down instead, but for the process you're doing the exact same thing. You're going to stick that one on there, make sure you line up your other one directly underneath it, and then that way you can slide or slide. So now we have our up and down ready and our side to side ready, and we can go ahead and start sticking them together. So I'm going to have my side to side go on the top. So what we want to do is we're going to stick it to one of our panels. So here we've got our base panels here, and turn that over. You can see you've got a gap on the top and a gap on the bottom. Now I've got these long sticky strips from scrapbook.com, and I got a bit fed up of peeling them off and then trimming them down like I've done with my red line tape. So I went ahead and just cut my whole entire sheet down to the exact size of my panel. So I just cut it down to be the same length as that bit there, so I can just peel these off and stick them on. Now if you don't have little sticky strips, then you can use just normal foam tape and you can just trim it down to be a bit thinner. But we do want these nice and thin, and we don't want these touching our sliders. So these are going along the outside edge of our bit of card, and they're nowhere near touching our little slider bit, so that these can remain nice and free and easy to move. So when we've got that on there, we can peel off our foam release paper, and I'm going to flip it back over. This square is about 1/4 of an inch bigger than this square that we started with. So all we have to do is line this up perfectly in the center and push it down. So nice and easy. You're just watching your smaller square, not your bigger square. And then you can firmly press that down with your bone folder if you want to make sure that's nice and stuck. So now we've got a panel that moves nice and easy, and there's nothing stuck to the back of it. We're going to now stick that on top of here. So what we want to do is put our foam tape along these two edges. So I'm going to take this and flip it over so I can see that edge there. And then this one will be going the opposite direction, obviously, to that. And again, exact same thing. We're going to line it up in the middle of that square because it's 1/4 of an inch bigger, so we can get it nice and central and stick it down. This doesn't matter too much if you get it ever so slightly wonky. Doesn't really matter in the grand scheme of things. So now we've got them both stuck on there, like so. We can now go ahead and stick this to our card base. Now either you can stick the panel on the back here first using your foam tape and then adhere the whole entire thing onto your card base, like so. Or if you're feeling like you're okay and you're nice and steady and it's not going to flop about on you when you stick it down, then you can stick it directly onto the card, whichever makes it easier for you. Just decide whether you want that panel on there just to make it a bit easier, or if you feel comfortable and confident, you can just go ahead and stick it directly onto the back. I'm going to stick the little panel on top because I find it a bit distracting when these kind of flop about a bit, and I find it a bit more difficult when I want to line it up central on my back of my card, on my card base. Now I can take my liquid adhesive and I can position that right smack in the middle of my card and wiggle it around until I get it right in the place I want it to be in. So I'll give that a second to dry. Now you're thinking this looks pretty ugly, but that's where this panel comes in. And this panel is ever so slightly bigger than our central ones. So this panel here, even if you get it slightly off, slightly wonky, it's still going to cover all of it. It's nice and bigger. We don't have to worry too much. So again, because this is a slider element, we need some more foam. So we're going to put foam on the top of those. You could put this panel on before you mount it to the card base. Completely up to you. We've now got the slider elements done and ready and dusted, so it doesn't matter which you do first, whether you put the top panel on or whether you put it onto your card base. Doesn't really matter. And peel off those. Now we can go ahead and stick on our front panel, and we will aim for the middle. So when you're putting that top panel on, you're aiming for the middle of the back altogether rather than your side bits, because it might throw your eyes if you look at these bits. Look at the card behind it and line it up. And now we have got our quadruple slider card. Now how gorgeous is that, and how quick and easy was it? It seems like a lot of work, but once you've got all your pieces cut, it really comes together quite quickly. So now we can just go ahead and decorate and embellish it, and we can go ahead and add in a little spot in here for writing if you don't want to write on the darker color. Okay, so I went ahead and picked out some of the elements. I pretty much pulled something off of every page. I was having lots of fun with these little elements that came in that paper pack. So I'm going to go ahead and stick these down. Obviously, when you're sticking things in, you don't want to use any foam or anything that's going to make the elements dimensional on your panels. Now, what could be quite cute in something like this, especially if it's a Christmas card, is you could have a little picture of each of your children. So the school photos would probably fit really nice in there, and have, you know, a picture of your child in there for your grandparents, or maybe a picture of you for your parents. It could just be quite fun if you want to decorate it up with some pictures in there, and then it's like a nice little surprise. The other thing we can do is we can add a little pull tab on the end. We could just take a little bit of ribbon and we could stick on a bit of ribbon on there, but I think it's pretty obvious as it goes that people can just pull those sides out, but you could write pull or stamp pull along one of the sides, and then they know they can pull it out. So I'm going to stick these down with a bit of liquid adhesive, and then I'm going to pop these on with a bit of foam. Now we've got our finished card. We can pull it from both ends, and we've got this beautiful little surprise element to our quadruple slider card. I went ahead and added a bit of cream colored card on the inside so I could write my message. It can stand up like so. If somebody wants to stand it up on like their mantelpiece, and you could pull out the sides. If you have pictures on there, that could be quite cute. So again, if you want your card to be all the same size, so the top and the back to be the same size, then again all you need to do is just cut your base card to be the same as your top panel. So my measurements are for a 4 by 4 inch card. Obviously it's bigger with your little panels sticking out the sides, but you can play around with those measurements. So again, you can make your card even bigger if you want to have a nice big 6 by 6 card, or keep it a bit smaller. You could do different angles on it for your edges. Lots and lots and lots of different possibilities. In terms of envelopes, you could use these little sweets bags. I get these from eBay, Amazon. Really cheap. They're meant for like kids candy, and that will fit your card in there beautifully well. You can stick it in, just fold it over, stick a nice little sticker on it, put a little address label on the front. You got a nice little envelope. Or you could take an oversized square envelope and pop it in one of these and put your address on the front. So the envelope really doesn't need to be overly complicated. As long as it fits your card, you'll be absolutely fine. So thank you so much for joining me tonight. I hope you had a good time, and I hope you give this a go. It's really fun and quite easy. It really isn't that scary, I promise. And the dimensions again will be in the description box below if you want to check them out. And I hope you have a lovely weekend. Take care. Bye.